September 24th, 2024. New Sweden, Maine. In the remote areas and wilderness of Maine resides a rustic county. Referred to by some as just the county, it resides at the northernmost point of the state. Much of it remains uninhabited, and throughout this huge swath of land, little towns dot the landscape. A popular spot for those wishing to be off-grid and away from society, but also a haven for hunters and fishermen. Aroostook County is also the largest county in Maine that shares its borders with Canada, and the larger cities that reside within it are along this line between the two countries. On September 24th, a mystery would baffle local residents and would send the internet scratching their heads and searching for answers. On this day, then 13-year-old Stefanie Damron would leave her house in New Sweden, Maine, and would walk into the woods and never be seen again. The mystery has perplexed Maine State Police, her parents, and even the FBI. Today on Unblurring the Unknown, we explore a current-day missing persons mystery and see what could have been the case of her disappearance and where Stefanie Damron could be today. Today on Unblurring the Unknown, the disappearance of Stefanie Damron. Welcome back to Unblurring the Unknown. As always, I am your host, Dominic, and today on the show we are exploring a current missing persons case. And with that being said, and I have said this before with current active cases, these things change all the time. And with the publication of this episode, things that I state could have been changed from then to now. In this case in particular, has a lot of things that just flat out don't make sense and has a lot of unanswered questions that really no one in particular seems to have answers to. With that being said, however, I hope to provide as comprehensive of coverage as I possibly can with this case and flip over every rock and look into every nook and cranny for information about this young girl and what could have led to her vanishing back on that day in September 13th. Again, like I said, information could have changed from the publication of this episode to possibly when you're hearing it. So again, I am taking all the information that I currently have available to me at this point and reporting it to you now in this episode. However, building on that before we dive into the episode, I am not a speculatory person by any means. I'm a very factual individual, and I've said that many, many times in this show. But this episode might be kind of a little different as we just don't have much to go on whatsoever. So with some of the theories, they might be a little out there, and many of them might be a little bit of a stretch, and that is only because of the information that I currently have at my disposal and what is currently being disclosed to the public. Now, there could be other things that the Maine State Police or FBI knows that they just haven't released to the public, and again, like I said, that could change by the time this episode comes out or whenever you're hearing it. But with that being said, let's get into the episode today. Firstly, how this episode is going to go is that we are going to dive into the events of the day Stefanie disappeared, of course, some strange inconsistencies and findings that I uncovered in my research, and then at the end, wrap it all up with my own thoughts on the case. But before I do that, I think it's also important to go over some other missing persons cases from the Aroostook County area of Maine to see if perhaps they could provide us some context or clues as to what could have been at play here in the case of Stefanie Damron. Now, there are very few missing persons cases within the county, and that could be due to the spread out nature of the county, but also the fact that these rural areas are statistically safer from crime, and due to the widespread nature of the population. Of course, those two factors, of course, the widespread nature of the population and the fact that these areas are super rural, that isn't always the case when it comes to lower crime rates, but they do usually coincide with each other. And these rural areas tend to be safer than opposed to living in the bustling cities, of course. So there is not a lot of missing persons cases, and I believe there's only 5 of them. I mean, if you count Stefanie, that makes 6. And the whereabouts of some of these people have actually been discovered. So even fewer than that over a considerable length of time. So these are very uncommon, and they don't happen very often. So when they do happen, they're notable, and a lot of people know about it, and the news about it gets spread around very quickly because these things just don't happen up there. Now, the first person from Aroostook County that I want to go over in kind of this string of disappearing people that I want to talk about is the case of Edward Bolstridge. Now, Bolstridge would disappear from his home this past year, actually, on August 22nd, 2024, from his home in Fort Fairfield. He would last be seen driving his 2016 Kia Soul towards the town of Presque Isle and Caribou Road en route to Caribou. Of course, when Bolstridge would disappear, a silver alert was issued for him. Edward suffered from memory issues and had multiple sclerosis. The search for Bolstridge spanned over multiple weeks with friends, family, and law enforcement looking to try and find where he could have went. On Monday, September 16th, Bolstridge's car would be spotted by U.S. Border Patrol air units on a logging road west of Allagash in the township T17R12. Now, you might be asking, what kind of town name is that? And the reason there are parts of Maine that are titled that is because they are technically still uninhabited. A lot of parts of the northern parts of the state of Maine are uninhabited, but they're not technically under the jurisdiction of town lines. So these areas still have names, just not really the town names that you might be used to because there ain't any towns, if that makes any sense. Upon the discovery of Bolstridge's car, his body was also found. Now it is uncertain how Bolstridge ended up all the way here and whether or not he got discombobulated on his drive. It is believed his initial destination that day was Presque Isle, and on the day he disappeared, he did get pulled over by a state trooper on the town line between Westfield and Mars Hill, 20 miles from his home in Fort Fairfield. Bolstridge's daughter quoted this interaction with the state trooper with the following: "He was going towards Mars Hill, but he really needed to be going back towards Presque Isle, and they redirected him." Now, once this interaction took place, the state trooper then followed Bolstridge for some time before ending his pursuit. And his daughter quotes again, "He started towards Presque Isle, but then he pulled off into somebody's driveway, and state police thought that he probably knew the person." Now, the reality of the disappearance of Edward Bolstridge is probably a cut and dry one, with him having, of course, a history of lapses in memory. This could perhaps explain that he got confused in where he was going, and this caused him to end up so far off the beaten path and probably succumbing to the elements. Of course, you could chalk this up to a freak accident or something like that, but again, let's talk about some of the other missing persons cases in Aroostook County. The next disappearance I want to talk about took place on September 8th, 2021, and involves Atten Rachmadi Shaw, and if I pronounced that incorrectly, I do apologize. Atten was an Indonesian immigrant who was living with her husband, Mike Shaw, and children in Washburn, Maine since 2020. Mike and Atten met in Indonesia in 2011, and supposedly it was love at first sight. When moving to Maine in 2020, her family in Indonesia reportedly had little contact with her, and her personal blog that she kept for some time pretty much stopped before she had moved to Maine, so that doesn't provide us any clues about her whereabouts. Despite Atten Shaw supposedly disappearing in September of 2021, she wasn't officially reported missing until the end of the year, which, in my eyes, is insanely suspicious. State police would then go on to get involved in 2023, and in February of this past year, there was a follow-up investigation being done at the Shaw's house for additional clues. Now, the investigation and details surrounding Atten Shaw's investigation and trying to find her whereabouts is very limited. Not much, if any, information has been released to the public, and you can begin to speculate a variety of different things and go in a variety of different directions in terms of what could be at play here or what happened to Atten Shaw. The mystery and cloudiness of the information that we do have leads me to believe that maybe her husband had something to do with it. Again, that is just me speculating, and I could be wrong, but that's just my personal opinion. But that's kind of usually a safe bet in certain cases like this, where the case is kind of filed a lot later than when the individual was last seen. In this case, again, Atten Shaw disappeared in September 2021, and she wasn't officially reported missing till the end of the year, and that is a giant red flag. Now, like I said, there is a very, very limited amount of information out there, and this kind of makes me trend towards the direction that maybe they're trying to find dirt on her husband to try and get a conviction. But who knows? That is just my own personal opinion. Now, the next disappearance I want to talk about happened in April 24th, 1993. So of course, a very large gap between these disappearances. And as of course, like I mentioned, this does not happen very often in this area. So it makes sense that there's these huge gaps of time where people would go missing in Aroostook County. But let's talk about this next disappearance. Virginia Sue Pictou Noyes, a mother of 5, would disappear after last being seen at a gas station in Holton, Maine on the morning of that day. It turns out that shortly before she arrived at this gas station, she was involved in a domestic violence incident with her husband Larry Noyes just a few hours earlier. Larry Noyes and his brother Roger Noyes Jr. would be with Virginia at a bar in Bangor where the two men would become extremely intoxicated and then assault Virginia outside of the bar. The two men were arrested and Larry was booked for domestic assault. Virginia was taken to Eastern Maine Medical Center and treated for her injuries, and at approximately 1 a.m., she demanded to leave the hospital to make it home to check on her 5 children. When she had left the medical center, she had made it to that gas station in Holton, and that would be the last time anyone would see her. While Larry would be locked up in Penobscot County Jail, Roger would just receive a summons for the assault charge, and Larry would later go on to post bail. However, when Virginia would disappear, all the charges against the men were dropped, which seems awfully convenient, if you ask me. Virginia's family has not given up hope to find answers about what happened to Virginia that night. However, they do believe foul play was involved in, so do I. After all, Virginia's sister, Agnes Gould, came forward about the abuse that Virginia had faced from Larry. She would detail incidences and where Virginia would be abused, and she would leave their home and come and stay with her sister and family, only for Larry to call her and beg and tell her that he wouldn't do it again, only for Agnes to get another call about the beatings only getting worse. Virginia's family has received a tip about her disappearance after doing an interview on Canadian cable television. Virginia's family and Virginia were part of the Micmac people and reside just over the border in Canada. Once going on this TV program and doing this interview, they do have a witness that they will not publicly name that came forward and stated that they believe that Virginia was picked up at that gas station in Holton and made it as far as Easton, which is a 47-minute drive apart. The only part of this timeline we realistically are missing is this drive from Holton to Easton, if it indeed took place, and what could have happened to Virginia if this drive took place, and we're asking, okay, where did Virginia go, or what happened to her? This is kind of the most compelling piece of evidence in the case up to this point, if you ask me. And if you were to pick my brain on this and ask me who might be responsible here, I wouldn't be surprised if it was possibly Larry's brother, Roger. Of course, Larry was locked up that night, and even if he posted bail, he wouldn't have been in the area still and even available in the morning because, I don't think he would have posted bail, but I couldn't find that anywhere that he posted bail immediately and then was available kind of early that morning. I didn't really see that, but with Roger just receiving a summons, he would still kind of be out and about. So it wouldn't shock me if Larry's like, hey, I'm going to go to jail. We need to get revenge. We need to get rid of her. And again, with the charges being dropped after she disappeared, it does seem awfully convenient. However, I do propose another possible theory, and I won't dive too deep into this, of course, as this isn't our main topic for the episode, but I suppose this perhaps could be something that is like the Highway of Tears over in British Columbia. And if you do not know what the Highway of Tears is, it is a large stretch of highway where since 1970, over 80 Indigenous women and people have disappeared or have been found murdered. Now, of course, this would not be something like the Highway of Tears, as that's on the other side of North America, but the crisis that is the missing and murdered Indigenous women phenomenon is not new. And it is a growing problem that more people should be aware of, as Native American women face murder rates that are 10 times the national average, which that in and of itself I could do in an entire episode on, and I probably will sometime in the future. But now let's move into the next disappearance to take place in Aroostook County. A man named Philip Letarte would last be seen on June 2nd, 1986. At around 3 p.m. on June 2nd, he left the home of Robert Erickson in Woodland, Maine. Philip told Robert that he was heading to Gary's Exxon, a gas station that was roughly a 3.5-mile walk from Robert Erickson's house, to buy cigarettes. Now, this is where the story gets interesting because after this, we don't know where Philip went. I also did find conflicting stories that said that Philip was supposedly last seen standing on Colby Road, one report saying that a man matching his description was seen on that road on the 6th, and the other report saying he was spotted on the 3rd, which would be just a day after he was last seen leaving the Erickson home. Other than that, that's really all we know. Now, you could begin to suspect a variety of things, such as kidnapping, or perhaps Philip got lost on his walk back, or who knows. This one seems to truly be a dead end considering how little we know. Now, the last missing person case I want to talk about is the case of Bernard Bunny Ross, Bunny being his nickname, of course. Bernard Ross would disappear at the age of 18 on May 12, 1977. From what I could find about his disappearance is that he reportedly had some sort of falling out with his family and was emotionally distraught and despondent. Perhaps he was having some type of mental illness or episode, and this is what sparked this entire incident. Who knows? Of course, I am just theorizing. Now, Ross lived in Fort Kent, but the day he disappeared, he actually stole his aunt's truck from Presque Isle. That same truck was then found on a dirt road 20 miles away, with Bernard nowhere to be found. This dirt road would be the last place he would be seen, and it would be on the Ashland and Portage town line. He was last seen wearing a chamois shirt, green vest, and corduroy pants. A development in this case would come in 2016 when Ross's parents received an anonymous letter that possibly contained information about their son's disappearance. But the police advised against making this known public, and this was actually all reported by the Washington Post in 2016. Other than that, we have nothing else in the case of Bernard Bunny Ross and his disappearance. It would be nice if that letter and if that note did get released to the public and you kind of open this up to a lot of the internet sleuths that are out there. I think that, and I understand, missing persons cases are a very delicate subject and it is often hard to discuss and talk about, but there is so many internet sleuths and people out there who want to help in these cases. And I think not releasing that information to the public is actually preventing you from possibly finding answers. Again, that is my own personal opinion. I have never had a family member of mine go missing, so I do not understand the pain that comes with that. But of course, again, that is all my personal opinion. But with all these cases being discussed, and I ask the question, do they cast any insight into the case of Stefanie Damron? And to be honest, I don't think so. I don't see any common denominators with any of these cases, and they seem to be extremely different in their circumstances in which these people disappeared. I know this seems kind of like a dead end, but I still want to discuss all these cases with you because the only similarity between these cases and Stefanie's is the lack of information we do know. Now, let's get back to Stefanie's disappearance. Stefanie Damron would disappear from her home in New Sweden, Maine on September 24th of 2024. Stefanie was last seen the night prior walking out from her home and into the nearby woods on her home's property. When she did not return, this is when she was reported missing the following day. Now, from this point on, very little is known about the case, and it almost seems like some information is very cryptic and hard to come by. Stefanie was last seen wearing blue jeans, a blue long-sleeve t-shirt, and Harley-Davidson hiking boots. Since her disappearance, the Maine State Police have been investigating, and as of most recently, the FBI have gotten involved with the case as well. Now, the police said this in a series of statements, and I quote, "Stefanie was last seen walking out of her house in the woods located on the West Road in New Sweden on September 23rd, 2024. Investigators have conducted many interviews and followed up on leads in Maine, nationally, and in Canada. The Maine Warden Service and Maine State Police Canine Unit have searched large parcels of land near Stefanie's last known location, and that was in a series of statements the police issued. Now, since the Maine State Police getting involved in the investigation, the FBI have now gotten involved and have issued a $15,000 reward for anyone who has information leading to Stefanie's whereabouts." And this is another quote that I pulled from FBI Special Agent in Charge Jody Cohen, and she said, "Any detail, no matter how small, could be helpful. Stefanie's family desperately wants to know where she is, and we are fully committed to helping our law enforcement partners exhaust every investigative resource to find her and bring her home." And of course, like I said, that was FBI Special Agent in Charge Jody Cohen at a press conference. Now, with all that being said, normally the FBI doesn't get involved with missing persons cases, especially this swiftly, I should say. And the response to that statement has been that, with it being a missing minor and the proximity that they are to the Canadian border, this possibly could be an incident of kidnapping and possibly smuggling her back over the border. And to be honest, for everyone's sake, That is the worst possible outcome, but it is a real reality of what could have happened. However, this first piece of evidence that we have and that I've been able to dig up in terms of what happened to Stefanie lies with an argument she had with her sister the day she disappeared. Her parents stated in an interview with a local TV station and later added on social media, and I quote, "Got into an argument with her sister, walked off," and added, "We lived a half-mile back in the woods and our kids are very comfortable in their surroundings, so there was nothing to raise flags the first few hours." Now, of course, I will circle back to this here in a little bit as, again, let's just keep listing some things that I found here before I attempt to cast my own theories or kind of try to piece together some pieces of the puzzle here. Stefanie was homeschooled by her parents, and because of that, they had some pretty strict rules around the house. They were so off the beaten path that Stefanie didn't have access to a computer and overall limited access to social media. Now, this part in particular, I want you to pay attention to. Some articles I read stated that this access to social media was prohibited, and some say that it was just limited. Now, why is this important? Some people have theorized that after this supposed fight with her sister, that she was talking to someone online and that she actually fled with this person that she was talking to. Now, this theory, which isn't talked about in a lot of the news articles that you read, is confirmed by Stefanie's mother, Lisa, in a Facebook comment forum. Now, I am uncertain to where the original thread in which the comment was posted, but I found it in the Maine Missing Persons Alerts Facebook group. Now, in a post posted by Mysteries in Maine, which is a user who I'm assuming covers stuff like this for content or helps spread the word on things like this, posted a couple of missing persons flyers and these comments posted on Facebook by Lisa. These comments, and there are two of them, say the following in response to someone else's initial comment. She was last seen walking down to the woods from her front yard in New Sweden, Maine. We believe she was talking to someone online and believe she met this person at the end of our driveway. We live 1.5 miles back from the road. Now, she also commented this as well, and I quote, "There have been several searches, and we believe someone picked her up at the head of our driveway. State police are not handling the investigation, the FBI are. They have used drones and also several searches with dogs too, hence why we believe she left with someone she was talking to online. I am asking anyone with information, however small you think it is, please let the authorities know, even if it is anonymous. Please help us bring our baby girl home safe and sound." Now, even though this seems to be the thoughts from the Damron family, and that has, of course, not stopped people from theorizing that this whole situation is incredibly odd, and that possibly the parents actually had something to do with her disappearance. Now, in scrolling these same Facebook comment sections of these posts about Stefanie in the Maine Missing Persons Alerts page, they actually put out a blanket statement directed at the people who think that Stefanie's parents had something to do with it, and this is what the statement read. And the statement came from Stefanie's mother's Facebook page, but it was actually a statement from her father. And I'm going to read this statement in its entirety, and I quote, "Consider this my statement, the father of Stefanie Damron. I've kept quiet and watched this dog and pony show long enough. To all the trolls making this difficult time that much more difficult, there's a special place in hell for you. I hope you don't have children, and if you do, I pray for your souls that you never have to face something like this. From all the beginning, we have cooperated with all the 3-letter agencies. CPS, FBI, and MSP all were great in the beginning, but as this case has unfolded, everyone's true colors have shown. Nobody at this point wants to look at the facts anymore, trying to turn this around on us. We weren't here. We were at job interviews. Stefanie got into an argument with her sister while we were gone and walked off. We live a half-mile back in the woods, and our kids are very comfortable in their surroundings, so there was nothing to raise flags the first few hours. This is our way of life. We chose to stay out of the world that's turned into a pornographic parade. We can't live in that world, and when we asked for help from that world that most of you call normal, this is how we are treated. Like I said before, your world is not for us. Our children are homeschooled and taught the basics and sent to Job Corp for their GEDs. CPS has been in our house, verified and confirmed everything. We have nothing to do with this. We just want our baby home. So quit all this. My wife doesn't need this. She needs our baby home. So stop writing us and start writing the Maine State Police and tell them to start doing their job with all the leads everyone is giving them and follow up on them. God bless." Now that, of course, ends the quote, and that is a lot to unpack. And, of course, this statement is coming from a frustrated father. And he has every right to be, especially if what he is saying is true and that the Maine State Police aren't following up on leads as quickly as they should be. Now, of course, this is the internet, and everything on the internet should be taken with a grain of salt, but it seems like the people who live in that area are more in tune with the updates and information about the case than the broader public are. Again, rumors can spread like wildfire, and that doesn't make anything that is added real or fake, but these comments, I think, hold some weight to them. Now, in another comment section in this same group on a different post, someone else makes a comment, and I think it is very compelling, or at least interesting, and it reads the following. "This is extremely disturbing watching these posts, and absolutely nothing has become of this young girl. It went from her having a fight with a sibling to now maybe someone picked her up. It went from the family that lives off-grid, homeschooled, and no use of technology, to she may have been online. It went from an organized planned search to canceled by the family. It went from the family was investigated to they really need to investigate them again. It saddens me that the family is not being honest about specific key evidence and other family members calling out each other's answers. It's at the point, is she alive? Is someone hiding her out like at first thought? I am in no way accusing any family member or anything. I am just stating the countless remarks of a group among close family acquaintances. I am sure everyone wants her found safe and pray this happens." Now, again, I don't know how true this is, and obviously this comment paints the parents in a much different light in terms of them not being fully honest about what could have been going on in their daughter's life and in their personal lives leading up to the disappearance. Now, upon looking into the Facebook profiles of both Stefanie's mother and father, you could say that their parenting styles are not orthodox. Obviously, with the statement I shared from the family, it seems like they have deliberately chose to live off the grid because of their opinions on the world and what they feel like it has become. Lisa Damron, Stefanie's mother's page, is flooded with posts about Stefanie, and of course, I am not saying go out there and check their Facebook profiles, and I am not trying to out them in any way, shape, or form. I am just stating my findings on this entire case. Chris Damron, Stefanie's father's profile, however, is not like that. It doesn't really mention much about the search efforts, at least for the past couple months, and it kind of just looks like a middle-aged man's Facebook profile with a couple weird reposts of slightly cringy TikTok edits. There is nothing there that screams out to me that he had something to do with it and that they are trying to cover it up, even though it is a touch on the weird side, but it doesn't really stand out as anything unusual. If there's anything I got from scrolling through these Facebook comments, there is quite a few people who say that the Maine State Police sucks and that the FBI is following up on leads, while the Damron family hasn't heard anything from Maine State Police. Now, of course, I am not going to jump on the finger-pointing game with the Maine State Police or whether or not if they're dropping the ball or if they're dragging their feet. I'm not going to jump on that train. But, again, if there is a law enforcement agency that is not doing their due diligence when it comes to an investigation, I'm going to be the first one that says, hey, they suck. But I can't find anything that's pointing in the direction like they are dragging their feet. So I can't come right out and say, hey, the Maine State Police sucks, because I genuinely don't know that. Well, with all this information being said, let's dive into theories on this one. Now, this first theory I have is that she fled with someone who she talked to online. Now, this one seems to be the one that her parents think most likely happened. Now, I can't say for sure if this is the case, because we actually don't know how much internet access she had. Now, if she had enough to where she could communicate with someone online and do it secretly enough to arrange a meetup, there must have been a pretty consistent back and forth, at least in my opinion anyways. Now, where they lived was extremely isolated, and with where they lived and the fact that they were homeschooled, possibly left much more to be desired when it came to interacting with people that were her age. That is kind of always the con when it comes to homeschooling, And that being with people who are homeschooled, sometimes they don't integrate or socialize as good as children who went to public school just because they were not exposed to that consistent interaction with others. Of course, I'm not going to dive into the statistics about homeschooled children. If you're listening to this and saying, "Oh, I'm homeschooled and I turned out fine," that I'm not targeting you. I'm not targeting in any way, shape, or form. I'm saying that usually, on occasion, they don't integrate or socialize as good. That seems to be a trend, and that's a trend. I'm not saying that is whether or not that happened for you or somebody else who was homeschooled. That usually is a trend. So again, take that with a grain of salt. But I also wanted to see if there was any kind of statistic out there that tracked the rate of missing homeschooled children in the United States, and I couldn't find anything in regards to that. So that itself, or that statistic, can't be big enough to where there is a trackable trend at least. Now, our second theory is that she was abducted from the woods. Now, this next theory is that someone was waiting in the woods or possibly stumbled upon her in the wrong place at the wrong time type of situation. Now, this theory in particular could be that someone picked her up after seeing her walk down her driveway or the road and then just decided to kidnap her, or perhaps this could be something else. Now, when I say this, I do not want it to come off political or anything like that, and I am adamant about not talking about politics on my show or picking a side. I'm just here to merely state facts. But we have seen increased amounts of illegal border crossings with migrants, and believe it or not, the Canadian border is no exception to this. A lot of people point to the southern border, but people are also sneaking into the country over the northern border, and some of them are criminals. And this is a quote from, this first one is a quote from Fox 23 Maine. The Holton sector of U.S. Customs and Border Protection encountered 53 people crossing illegally from Canada into Maine, which was a 178% increase from the same period the previous year. And this quote comes from U.S. Customs and Border Protection. Border Patrol agents stopped 4 vehicles carrying 20 Romanian nationals from crossing into the United States from Canada in Hodgson, Maine. 2 of the individuals were identified as being involved in transnational criminal organized crime. Now, in a lot of areas, there is no fencing separating the U.S. border from the Canadian one, and with Canada having very favorable immigration laws, it allows travel to the country, where then the illegal immigrants then cross the U.S.-Canada border from there. Now, again, that whole statement of information should not be political, but a lot of people make it political now, and I don't want it to come off political. I don't want anything like that, but this is a reality. This is happening. This is not political. This is factual. And I report factual information. This is factual. So there are criminals who are crossing the Canadian border. However, you could say it's only a few. You could say it happens every month. However often you want to say it is, it's happening regardless. There are illegal immigrants crossing the border, and in some cases, obviously in the Romanian nationals' case, criminals that are crossing the U.S.-Canadian border. So could it have been possible that an illegal immigrant party that was involved with some type of crime or human smuggling stumbled upon her in doing a run with possibly all these immigrants, and when they saw her, they had to dispose of her because they couldn't have anybody see? Now, of course, this whole theory is loaded, but I honestly don't think so. I think New Sweden is far enough away from the border that they wouldn't have stumbled upon anything, and if there were illegal immigrants hiding in the woods, again, I think New Sweden is too far removed from the Canadian border to see why they'd be hiding. I think once they would cross, I'd have to imagine they would try and just go to civilization where they could get resources rather than skulk around in the woods where in Maine, where it's pretty much untapped wilderness, animals, elements, things of that nature. I just don't think that this is the case. Now, our last theory is that she ran away from home. Now, of course, this one is just that she simply ran away from home and some type of accident befell her when she did so. Now, her parents have come out and stated that it wasn't uncommon for her to leave the house and go into the woods for many hours at a time. Perhaps she grew dissatisfied with how she was living at home, or perhaps due to the argument she had with her sister, maybe she had had enough and thought that she wanted to leave home for good. Except some type of accident happened. Either she got lost in the woods and possibly succumbed to the elements, or perhaps ran into a predator of some sort. This just, Again, very, very unfortunate, but this could be possible. And this does happen, and people's bodies aren't recovered for years after the fact, and even in places where searchers have searched numerous times. I've dived into a lot of cases and done a lot of research into cases of the missing 411, and there's places where searchers have looked over half a dozen times and they have not been found. A body has not been discovered. And then just that one time that somebody goes right back through there again, it's like there's a body there. So it is very strange, it's very unusual, but it does happen. And for me, this theory is a close second. In regards to a final theory, I think I'm going to go in her parents' direction, that possibly she was talking to someone online and she met up with that person. It seems like the FBI is doing a lot of due diligence in terms of following leads from multiple other states, so it seems like that might be the direction that they're going as well. Again, I can't confirm that in any way because the FBI hasn't released that information. But to me, it seems like that's the direction that they're going, that she's fled with somebody that either she had talked to online or something like that. But it wouldn't shock me either if she did run away from home in some type of capacity and there was an accident either. But of course, those are just my personal thoughts and theories on this entire case. Now, if you have your own personal thoughts and theories in regards to this case, you want to share kind of your own theories, your own hypothesis on whether or not what happened to Stefanie Damron, feel free to do so in the comment section. You can email me as well. Let me know. Let me know your own personal thoughts on this entire case. But with that being said, that is going to conclude this week's episode on the disappearance of Stefanie Damron. And if you are listening to this on Spotify, please turn on post notifications and click that little button so you get notified every time I post a new episode. If you're listening to this on YouTube, please like, comment, subscribe. It helps me out greatly, and I appreciate it more than you will ever know. But with that being said, also follow me on TikTok at Unblurring the Unknown. Follow me on Instagram at Unblurring the Unknown. And feel free to send me topic suggestions. I do them. I usually will tell you when I do an episode that is a topic suggestion. It actually helps me out. It saves me from digging through all of my countless queue and episode topics and say, hey, that one's a topic suggestion, I'll do that one. So saves me a little bit of time in that regard. So feel free to send me those topic suggestions. Again, you can send those to me via Instagram direct message. You can send them to my email, which is unblurringtheunknown@gmail.com. Send them over to me. I do them. I add them to the queue, and I do get to that. But with all that being said, I hope you appreciated this week's episode. Again, a current missing persons case. Definitely a very interesting one. Definitely a perplexing one. And hopefully we get answers and we find Stefanie Damron very, very soon. But again, that is going to do it for me and this week's episode of Unblurring the Unknown. And I will see you all on the next one.